all of this stuff, it's hard for even my loved ones to witness. But this is how I think I know it's made for me, because I can't see myself doing anything else. Like, this is the only way I know how to do it. I wish there was a softer, easier way, but I'll only know after it's done that I did this and it led to that. But I'm for it. I'm still here, and I love the projects I'm on and that I'm doing, and the opportunities and the people I'm working with. And those are going to be my ride or die people at the end of the day.
Well, Kevin, welcome to From Vision to Creation. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, man.
Well, Kevin, so I know that you were born in Korea and you were adopted by a white family in Philadelphia. And you talk a lot about how growing up in an all-white community was hard for you, being the only Asian in that community. Can you kind of talk about your experience with that and kind of how that shaped your perspective on the world, really, when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think what growing up as an Asian American, especially adopted, you have a little bit of an identity crisis. But then I found later on, actually, in life, it became a really nice, unique perspective, actually, because I think being a Californian Korean American adoptee now, I think I bring a lot of different perspectives into the Asian community here, because I didn't realize that growing up there were a lot of Asians, right? Like, I mean, I knew of China and Korea just because I'm Korean, but I didn't really meet too many Koreans that I felt were aspirational. They're very kind of like the stereotypical Asian American that we see in TV and media. And by the way, why not? Because it's like I only met like 1 out of 1,000 Koreans, or people that I've ever met are like Korean, 1 out of 1,000, right? So it's like I thought the majority of the world was black and white, literally. So I actually forgot I was even Asian for a long time until, obviously people pointed out, pick on you, point you out, and just say how foreign or different you look, or you don't belong, or rejection for race purposes. And that's when I started to really get deep dive into my Asian roots a little bit more. It was actually after college. Definitely grew up very self-hating for a little bit. And I found out later in life that actually there's a lot of Asian self-hating, so I'm not unique in that perspective. But I would say that coming here to California was a new eye-opener for me, because it's like, holy cow, there's so many Asians, right? And in Los Angeles, it became like very comfortable. And I could see why a lot of people in California, or Asians in California, don't see race as that big of a deal, especially being Asian, because they were a big chunk of this world over here. But they don't realize outside of Los Angeles, Asians aren't dominant in any city, really. So I feel like I just brought a different perspective of what it's like growing Asian American, because, I get a lot of the white perspective because that's where I grew up around. I also get a lot of the Asian perspective, and I just feel like I'm like a good bridge between the two.
Yeah, and listening to your story too, it resonated very deeply with me as well, because I grew up in a small town called Laredo, Texas, and as one might imagine, and I was, growing up gay, and as one might imagine, it wasn't conducive to being who you are in that respect. And so I was severely bullied, and I also went through this crisis of not really loving who I was, or maybe that's not even it. I just didn't feel comfortable. I felt like I was always kind of like displaced in a way, and I was always trying to be something different. And I remember, I watched your TED Talk, which was amazing, on redefining Asian masculinity. And you said something at the end that really struck a chord in me. So you said, it's not that hold on, I don't want to botch this. You said, I thought I wanted to be white, but really all I wanted was to be treated like I was white. And so that kind of was the same thing for me. Like, I didn't necessarily want to be straight, but I wanted to be treated like I was straight.
Yeah, the acceptance of it. You can go to any part of the world and just be accepted, like a straight guy, right? Not be persecuted or discriminated against, or unfavored, or be disadvantaged, right? And that's just how I wanted to be treated, just no disadvantages, just like a normal white dude. It's funny because I think it was Jenna Ortega said something publicly on the news, which is she got good advice to just act like a basic white guy, like, and her career started to blossom. And it's true because I think when you're a minority, it's like we have this worldview it is true. I'm not saying it's not, but if you start acting as if you're something else, it can also be true. You know, she started acting like a normal white guy, which is like, hey, you don't have to be special, you know, and just expect good things to happen to you all the time, you know? And it started to happen. So I think that's really good advice. And I don't even think she meant for this to be talked on podcasts or anything or be like any self-help thing. But it's like, yeah, that's really good because I always acted like, yeah, I was always at a disadvantage for a while. And I'm not saying that still isn't because it still creeps up where I'm like, oh my gosh, like sometimes I wonder, oh, if I was just a normal white guy, would I be in this disadvantageous position, you know? Maybe not. Or a hot white girl, you know, like maybe sometimes I'm the wrong gender as a race too, you know, and you know, those things creep up to me, but Asian Americans have a different view, men too, especially are very different than any other minority men. You know, we have the disadvantage now because we're men, right? And then we're also a minority still, where I think when a lot of Asian men say like, hey, Asian women have it better. It's just that because in the DEI movement that was going on for a little bit, I still think it's still there. It's just, you know, hopefully makes a comeback. But it's like an Asian woman checks off two boxes. They're a minority and they're a woman. So, but a man, it's like, oh, yeah, you're a minority, but it's like you're a man. Like that's not, you have too many advantages. But what really people don't know is that Asian men are very much like women at a very disadvantaged position. I mean, if you look at statistics, like even in Silicon Valley, you have a better chance of becoming a CEO as a white woman than an Asian, even though Asians dominate a lot of the tech industry, but they're lower positions. They don't get to the higher positions. So that's what it's very interesting. It's like Asian men don't have those advantages even today. So it's also not viewed as that because a lot of the elite are sometimes Asian men. Like look at the new companies and stuff, the AI companies run by Asian men, but it's like those don't represent the majority. Kind of very much like today with men, it's like the majority don't represent the Donald Trumps of the world or the Elon Musks or the CEO of 500 Fortune companies. That most men don't represent that, you know, just normal working guys. So kind of same thing with Asian men. It's like it gets skewed and we don't really get too much recognition of like our disabilities, or I don't want to say disabilities, disadvantages, that we try our best to make it an advantage because, we just have the top, like people are like China's rule and everything, but that's not Asian American though. That's China, you know, most Asian American men have nothing to do with China.
Right. Yeah, you know, that's actually a really interesting statistic about Silicon Valley. I did not realize that a white woman has more of a chance than an Asian becoming CEO when it is predominantly Asians in the workforce.
Yeah, I think it came out from an Ascend report. I knew it was some type of business for Asian Americans report that came out that was basically saying, yeah, like a lot of people think Asians are doing great in tech because you hear about tech founders, but it's like, not the majority of Asian men and stuff or people in leadership positions.
Well, and you know, it's interesting because, you know, coming from a marginalized group myself, I've never really noticed this until I started preparing for this conversation, that the way that marginalized groups are portrayed in Hollywood and in cinema, especially maybe not so much now, but definitely just a few years ago, it's almost like the groups become satire in the film. And so that really does shape the way society views people, especially if you live in, you know, a small town in middle of America that's not incredibly diverse.
Well, I mean, you look at Hollywood now, it's like the Asian man, for instance, is they're portrayed as half white, half Asian for the leading men. Even people like some of our greats have a hard time becoming like a romantic leading man. You look at Marvel movies, right, with Shang-Chi. Hopefully they change that, but he seems to be the only superhero without a love interest. Friend zone right away, right? Comedic humor. You can always be a comedy guy or the nerd, right? Very stereotypical Asian nerd. Or you can be the other trope, which is like kind of the how do I say this without offending people? Because it's not like I think it's a bad thing, but there was a statistic that came out. I can't quite quote, but I can send the link to you if you want. That a poll said that gay Asian men were seen more American than straight Asian men. So that in itself says like, oh, straight Asian guys, where do we fit then in Hollywood, right? Well, the nerds, right? You know, we have few more, I'd say, leading Asian men who are nerds and the stereotypical nerd than the romantic actual interest that, you know, we'd like to see. And it doesn't represent the majority, by the way, of like what we want to see. It's just kind of whitewashed a little bit of what white people see Asians as, you know?
And I think it's really cool, Kevin, that you had these realizations early on in your life, even though I know that they're painful. I feel that this, you know, having these realizations and experiences really did shape your the trajectory of your career and how it is you approached your work and how ambitious you've been. So, and I know that shortly after graduating from Temple University, you moved to New York City to pursue a career in modeling and acting. And I know that a lot of what was driving you was to, you know, be an influence for other Asian men. You know, you're being in entertainment, being that role model for them. And also, I know that that coincided with your fitness journey, because you also mentioned in your TED Talk that you began to strip yourself of your Asian qualities, I believe is what you said. And part of that was, you know, going to the gym and gaining muscle and stuff like that. How do you feel that going on that journey and then moving to New York to pursue this, how do you feel that it kind of shaped what you did after that?
Shaped a lot, actually. So I was just sharing a story about how the first time I met any cool Asians was actually at Abercrombie and Fitch in New York City. It's like met a group of Asian models. We can thank racism for that because, you know, Abercrombie at the time was getting a lot of crap for the slogan of two Wongs make a white t-shirts, and they thought they were hilarious with, like, you know, the stereotypical bucktooth, long duck, dong stereotypes and Breakfast and Tiffany stereotypes on their shirts. So I think it was probably more of like a PR control at the time. By the way, they've changed their brand 100% by now. So it's like, this is talking about the past, but I remember coming there. I felt very like honored. I was like, oh, they actually want an Asian guy now, you know? But it was due to racism. So it's kind of a cleanup. But I met the coolest Asians then, you know, like they were models, they were beautiful, they were cool. They introduced me to like Korean barbecue. They were like, you should go back to Asia. We'll hook you up with Asian talents out there to get your foot in the door. And I thought, yeah, this is great. Like, let me try going to Asia to pursue a modeling career. So going to Asia, pursuing a modeling career, it was weird. It actually made me very sad. It made me very sad because, even though they thought I was handsome and talented and everything, what I really found out at the end of the day is that Asians look for approval for white people. So it's like very interesting, like how even if you go to Thailand, you go to Hong Kong, you know, they're doing all the, Korea especially, right? Like skin bleaching, all this stuff, and, you know, trying to feminize themselves a little bit more. It's like, it's a very interesting thing where I'm like, man, all this changing is just like another form of inferiority complex. You know, it's like they idolize American culture so much, right? You go over the, like, I've even heard stories of like even Koreans coming to America and they don't want to deal with another Asian actor, or not actor, or like manager or whatever, or producer or whatever. I've just heard stories. I don't know if they're true, but it's like, I could see that because I was like, when I went to Asia, the opportunities didn't really open up for me because it was like, well, our Brazilian models do really well. The white models do really well. The ones that actually look more Spanish or white do really well, but you kind of fall in like a weird category. You're not Thai or you're not Hong Kong and you don't speak the language, but you could look like it, but you don't fit in. But then I'm like, but why does somebody who doesn't speak a language who's white get a pass? Like Asians give white culture so many passes and they are the hardest on ourselves. So that's what I mean. It made me really sad because I was like, wow. It's almost like and by the way, this is like, I'm talking about the majority. Like, I'm not saying this is actually like everybody. Everybody's gonna be, oh, well, I don't. It's like, well, if you look deep down inside, I'd probably say you got a little bit of banana in you too, like it's ingrained in us because it's like, we're the first ones to assimilate, in America, like to try to get the approval of white people. It's in our history. But how do we break that history? And the first thing I thought about when I was growing up is, well, it's the shit that I watched on TV. It's the ultimate form of marketing and education you could ever have is to sit down, let your subconscious work for you by watching how Asians are portrayed through TV, film, and media, because that shapes worlds. Now social media does, which is nice, but at the same time, movies, TV are still the number one place where people get really influenced on how culture is. They call it pop culture for a reason. It starts to make moves on people like, look at Crazy Rich Asians, look at Beef, Bling Empire. The moment that those shows aired, I felt the pop culture shift immediately.
And so you have this realization when you're pursuing modeling as a career in Southeast Asia. So then I know you end up moving back to New York. Is that right? After Southeast Asia?
Yeah.
You were in Singapore, right?
I was in Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand, Korea.
And then you moved back to New York City?
Yes, that's when I started taking acting classes, but I also got deep into depression. That's the time when I just really, really didn't like being Asian. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow, other Asians don't even really like being Asian, so why should I? Type of thing.
And this was the time when you decided to skateboard across the entire country,
yeah,
right?
That was after, I lost all my hair. My career wasn't doing so well. I'd spent 3 months skateboarding then.
Let's actually talk about that for a second before we get into the skateboarding, which, by the way, when I read that you did that, I was like, oh my God, I know he's going to have stories about this one. So you move back to New York, you're falling into a depression. You mentioned that you were drinking at the time. You develop alopecia, which causes you to lose your hair. How did when you realized that your health had really taken a turn, what was the first big decision that you made to kind of start turning that around?
I became kind of like a health junkie for a little bit. It's like doing all these cleanses and trying to work out, meditation, all these things for a little bit. And, I fell through some magic crystal traps and psychic traps. I feel like you weren't a real New Yorker unless you went to a psychic once.
Yeah.
So, but it was a very dark time. But I started to do a lot of that, self-searching. I thought I wanted to do something courageous for myself. So for instance, I thought of something that I wanted to do in childhood. I remember being a kid and having a skateboard for the first time. And I never rode that skateboard once because when I went to the church parking lot to try for the first time, I saw a bunch of kids who were older than me and they were really good. And I just took my skateboard back and cowered out. And I was like, you know what? I want to do something that scared me. And that was one of the first things. I don't know why. I think it's because I bumped into a guy in the subway who had a penny board, and I was like, that looks cool. Let me try that. So I thought to myself, well, why not? Why not now? And so picked up penny boarding, decided to just do the whole trip, and I thought I had time and it would be a good time for self-reflection and maybe I'd find myself more, but actually it caused a lot more disturbances. It really felt empty and shallow at the end.
Well, and also just for people who don't know this about you, Kevin literally skateboarded from Los Angeles to New York City.
Boulevard to, I think it was over, what bridge was it? The Brooklyn Bridge or something? New York City, yeah.
Well, and Kevin, it's interesting because I think that sometimes when you're like on a quest for self-discovery and you're going to do something drastic, oftentimes you do this big drastic thing, and then the worst thing happens at the end. You're like, "Uh-oh, I feel just as lost or empty as I did when I started it." But I think that happens immediately after. I'm sure like after some time has passed by, you could probably look back and say, in retrospect, like, "Oh, you know what? I had to do that because this, that, and the other happened afterward, or I learned this about myself." Would you think, is that the case, do you think?
Probably not for this.
Okay.
I actually think skateboarding across the country is just a bucket list thing. Like, to be real, like if looking back on it, if I probably recommend just getting help instead. Go to a 12-step program, go spiritual guidance or therapy, or shit, even the last resort in people's life, which is just go to Bali for a month. Like, I definitely recommend that before skateboarding across the country because, yeah, you feel purposeful every day, every step, but it's like, the thing is, but for what? To me, it was like just a way to vent, I guess, or let out angers or disappointments and to just push myself and challenge it. But I think if I would have taken that energy and pushed myself for something else, something better would have happened. Because to be real, nothing came from that. Not that I know of. It's like a lot of like trying to make it into a documentary, but nothing really took off on it. It's like, yeah, I mean, as much as I'd like to say it was inspirational and it was really purposeful, like there are things that are just a waste of time and distraction.
Well, I think that's a good lesson just right there. And what do you think the number one thing you did not expect from doing this was? Because I'm sure you had an idea of what it was going to be like, right?
Yeah, I thought it'd be really purposeful and people would get on board, or like, I'd meet the coolest people but by the way, I met some wonderful people along the way, but I thought I'd feel myself getting stronger, but I didn't feel stronger at the end. So maybe it was a stepping stone to realize that this wasn't going to work for me, I love that feeling of like every day you wake up and you just have to skateboard. You got a purpose. You're just going for X, Y, and Z, right? Like locations. That's probably about it, but it's like somebody wants to self-discovery, like you can do anything other than that, I mean, shit, go take an acting class if you want to self-discover, or get help, or spend some time on a podcast and talk it all out, or therapy, there's better ways, I'd say.
After you did this, I know there was a moment where you had an opportunity to attend a Q&A with Jeremy Lin, the basketball player that a friend invited you to. Yeah. And you joked, you said, well, I wasn't sure because I had a date that day. So you were kind of debating between the two.
It was. Yeah.
But so you show up and you create a video and you ask him, you say, have you ever heard of the stereotype that Asian men aren't viewed as attractive? And then his answer shocked you. Can you kind of talk to us about the answer and then what that did and how that then led to your starring in the Ugly Model documentary?
I had a theory before going in there that if I felt this way as a model, not getting matches or feeling discriminated because I'm Asian, I'm like, I bet you even somebody like Jeremy Lin understands this. I'm sure he's experienced it, some other people. So I came in there with a theory and I was out to prove that theory. And yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised to hear that, yeah, he thought Asian masculinity was a thing. And the fetishization or the actually emasculation of Asian men was a real thing. And so that actually was, people don't realize that was actually a pretty scary moment in my life because I was like, wow, what do I do with this now? Do I release it on YouTube? Can I? Should I? Like, what would happen? But I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let me just see what happens. And I remember that day, like when I uploaded it, it was like, I could watch it just starting to take off. And it was just like really exciting because I was like, wow, this actually means something, It did peak after a little bit, but it's like, it hasn't really grown, but it's like, wow, it really hit an audience hard and fast, which just led to more scrutiny around Asian masculinity. I think my one regret is like not continuing that conversation a little bit further, which is why I'm going back to a little bit of those grassroots of speaking more about Asian masculinity, where it is today, because it has to do with men too, which I think is a really big topic. And I think it's great because, I get to show a little bit of a different perspective of masculinity and what a man is today through the Asian American lens, which is very different than any other ethnicity lens. And so creating that documentary came out of just trying to find my roots. I went to a Korean adoption organization and just started hanging out with some Korean adoptees. They're like, hey, I know a documentary producer, budgets were right. They were low budget. Like we were able to do a Kickstarter. Funny, I'm not too sure if the Kickstarter would do well today, but I was like, wow, first time doing a Kickstarter, it was successful at, a higher budget of, I think it was like 25, 30K, right? So it meant like people were interested in this topic. And then we filmed the documentary over a long period of time. But yeah, it was just definitely a personal journey and I was glad it's out there, but I'd say I'd want to continue that if it were ever to come because documentarian said this doesn't feel complete at the end. And I know why, because there hasn't been a transformation, if that makes sense. I was still documenting the discovery phase of what it was to be an Asian guy. What I learned in AA, which I love, is there's you share your experience, strength, and hope. And if you only share your, worst times, they call it a drunkalogue, right? It's not helping people. The ugly model had a big drunkalogue, if I were to say that. It's a lot of what happened? What's the problem? Shared a little bit of strength in it, because obviously my career started to blossom a lot more. I moved. People were excited to see what was going on in my life. But then I didn't really get to the hope part. What's my life now? Why is it so different, Because at that time, it wasn't different. I was I'm still a single Asian guy, still trying to make a difference. Trying to get heard. And I think now it would be a nice, more of a complete story. So there's experience, strength, and hope in all of it. Back then, I think it was just experience, just a lot of pretty sad, I'd like to add a little bit more strength and hope into it.
Well, first of all, I think that you do in all the things that you're doing and just putting yourself out there and, discussing these very vulnerable, sensitive topics is hard. It feels weird sometimes to actually talk about it on a public platform. And also I find a conversation centered around these topics, specifically when it's pertaining to racism, discrimination, anything like that. It's a very foreign topic to me because I've never been that way. I've always been accepting, and I'm not sure if I can say that because I was part of a marginalized group and I dealt with that myself. But even though it's foreign and it feels a little uncomfortable for me, I enjoy having these conversations because I think they need to happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think conversations need to be seen in different platforms with different viewerships and different perspectives, but also to different solutions. Yeah, I think there's a lot of solution that's missing, but a lot of people don't want to actually act on those solutions because they're not the easiest thing. How do you change the minds of immigrants who have an immigrant mindset of not giving back or only playing it safe, not seeing the arts, acting, entertainment as a career path, more charity and stuff like that. How do you change that mindset?
And Kevin, I read that you moved here to Los Angeles in 2018, and that you started hosting potlucks as a way of building community versus networking, which I actually found very interesting because my experience here in LA, and again, I don't want to generalize because I've met a ton of amazing people, but I have also met some people that are not very nice, have a lot of ego, and I've also, especially when it comes to entertainment, I've met people with a lot of ego and entertainment. And so I think that your approach to hosting these potlucks, building community here in a town where, it's not super easy to make friends is really interesting because this is a way for you to really get to connect with people in a way that's meaningful, that transcends even, business contacts or what have you.
Yeah, I actually learned how to do this through a book and a friend of mine, Keith Ferrazzi. So he has a book called Never Eat Alone. Went to his house a few times to learn how he hosts dinners, and just did my own version, right? It was like potluck's an Asian thing. Like, let's just get a bunch of people over and do a potluck, but do it like how Keith does it, which is he curates it where we can all have a turn speaking about a topic and really getting to know each other and really being of service to each other there, where it's like if you see somebody alone, you help them out, you give the plate to the person in front. Feels great, right? So I learned a lot of that through him, but I wanted to do it genuinely in the Asian community and have it focused. It was actually, to be real, I've stopped doing it because it was a lot more fun and more genuine before Bling Empire happened. I made my best friendships and connections before that happened. I've made almost all of them afterwards. I've met the worst, you know? And so it's interesting because when I mean the worst, I'm like just not genuine, it feels like sometimes, or it just fades, or it's transactional, you know, it's weird. And I stopped because like there's a lot of egos, there's a lot of people that came out of nowhere. Like I remember the potlucks before, it's like I was on top of it, and you know, 8 out of 10 people would show up. Now it's like after the show aired, it's like 15 out of 15 that I didn't invite, 5 of them showed up, and then another 5 show up, and it's like, and then I find, you know, there weren't the most authentic people coming to these things. Like, you know, they're attracted to the fame at the time, you know, and it's like, I bet you I probably have a harder time filling those seats now, just because it's like, you know, our show's been done for a couple years. People will move on to the next thing, you know, and to be real, like I just don't. What's done is done, but I would just say that I probably like would have loved to have continued them, but at the same time, like I started to see a little bit of the real Hollywood, I guess, at the time. You know, it's like, wow, people really go there to get. You know, it's like it wasn't really there to give; it was really there to get. You know, and I found that kind of interesting after the switch, you know, happened with Bling on Netflix and stuff. So, but now it's like it's cool because I get invited to a lot of stuff. So I get to make my connections authentically in the way I want to at a lot of different events. Like I don't have to host anymore. Because to be real, I was just hosting just to stay in touch with people half the time, you know? Hey, you know, let's develop something that's really cool, like a friendship even. And I'm still friends with a lot of those people, which is nice from before.
You know, and it's so interesting that you bring that up too, because I've experienced that in my own way. So when I first moved to Los Angeles, I have a friend here. He's older. He's actually a friend of my uncle's. He's a very successful director. He's done really well here. And I asked him to go to dinner because I was moving here from Texas. I left all of my friends, all of my family. I knew very few people here. So I really just wanted to, you know, grab dinner and start building a community. And we sit down at dinner and he says, you know, we small talk a little bit, and then he's like, okay, so are you an actor? You know, trying to get in movies? And I was like, oh no, like I'm not. I own a marketing agency, and that's what I do. And then he said, oh, okay. And he was like, well, what about your fiance? Is he an actor? Is he trying to get in movies? And I said, no, not at all. He works in food importation, you know, furthest thing from. And then he said, he goes, oh, that's refreshing. And at first I thought, I kind of left that exchange thinking like, what was that about, you know? And I'd never experienced anything like that before. But then, you know, slowly but surely, you know, being exposed to more people, and the second they know that you know someone or that you're friends with this person, things do change. And by the way, like, I know that you've experienced it on a completely different level that I have, but I've seen it, and it is a little discouraging.
Yeah, and it can be. Like, I think there's phases to it too. So I talked to other Asian actors about it, and they have the same experience. Because I was like, yeah, you know what? I think I'm just getting out of the jaded phase. He's like, oh yeah, I've been there. It's like we shared these stories, and it's like, yeah, come in all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you think everybody's out genuine and everything, and then you hit a wall, and you're like, whoa, this is not. I mean, you hear stories that it's like, well, I didn't think it would happen to me.
You're right. I thought I was going to be different.
Yeah, then it does. And then you're like, oh, wow, this is just a typical Hollywood story. And then, you know, you get out of it and you come out stronger, wiser, better. And I think that's what's happening with me. It's like, wow, I've come out of the other side. Sure, a little tussle and roughened up a little bit, but it's like you come out wiser. You come out with more experience. You come out knowing more than you did before, and learning to trust yourself more than anything. Because I think a lot of times, like, I just didn't trust myself enough, so I just kind of just like, everybody and everybody, what can we do? Like, you come over here, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Yeah, sure. Handshake's good. No contracts. Well, and then like definitely want contracts for stuff. Yeah, you learn who wants what really quickly, and I think it's tricky when people know you from something then, in that sense. It was a lot easier when before it's like, hey, people just knew me from a TED Talk, I just knew people wanted to come to these dinners and be with me because I stood for something. That was a lot easier to take. So mixed with this, it's like, yeah, like I now see what actors talk about when it's like, yeah, I just want to act, Fame part gets a little weird, That's why I think influencers are interesting, because the fame part is all they go for. So it's like, it's interesting to me, like, you don't find that weird, guys, like,
not to be mean, but aspiring to nothing in a way. I mean, there's nothing, that fame is hollow. What is fame? People know who you are, and then
yeah, the fame for fame's sake. It's like somebody said, it's like nothing's worse than a famous broke person. It's like, fortunately, there's a lot of influencers that are famous and broke. And then, because that's all they want, right? And it's like, here for me, it's like, yeah, I want to create something, like a legacy, like something where my name and my skills are up there, whether it's reality TV or scripted TV, right? It's like, it's always going to be up there now, which is great. Leaving something important that's made a difference. And yeah, I mean, help me out too, but it's like, I think the influence world is very tricky now. It's like, to be real, I think my least favorite people have been influencers I've met.
Okay, Kevin, I just recently went to a party, a Coachella after party, and it was everything that is wrong with influencer culture and the internet was at this party. And I quickly realized that too. I was like, this is not my scene.
Yeah, I mean, but also too, on the flip side, it's like some of the best people I've met are also influencers.
Well, and then you can't generalize.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, right? It's like, I guess people could say that about actors. The worst people I've met are actually the nicest people I've met are desperate actors, by the way, because they just want to act, It's everything else I think is a little tricky.
Well, and on this topic too, I find that interesting that people who want to act, really pursue their craft, or whether it be singing, acting, anything or model, and anything in entertainment, it's almost like people become skeptical of you because you want to hone your craft, which I also find kind of weird. Like, aren't those the people that you want doing it?
Yeah, but like, taken many acting classes, been around many actors, nobody likes somebody who's desperate. So a lot of the times it's like, yeah, you're honing your craft, but you're also desperate for the next role. And it's like, it gets tricky. It's like, how do you not be desperate for a role when you actually really need it? It's like, nobody actually wants to be the person to give you that big break.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Even though everybody's been at that position where they need a break.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and I want to talk about Bling Empire too, because this was the first all Asian reality TV cast on Netflix, which is huge, and especially considering what your mission was to pursue a career in entertainment. What was that like, being part of that cast?
Well, it's obviously crazy. I think to be real, I think, getting enveloped in that, I think I did become a worse person for a little bit. It's like, yeah, reality TV, it's definitely makes you different. It's like, it really is like that thing. You are the people you surround yourself with, and it's like, you start hanging around crazy, you become a little crazy. And by the way, I enjoyed the crazy for a little bit. They're fun people, but it's like, you get enveloped in that world. You get to see all the fun things you've never been experienced to before. Like, when I hear people say like, oh my gosh, like I was in, Beverly Hills or wherever, or Bel Air, and I get greeted by valet and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's an everyday world for Bling Empire world, So you start to get used to it, and it is magical. It's great. It still today, it defined me, but I'm still finding that project, which I think I'm on the right track now recently with what I'm doing in life now. But it's like, still trying to find that project that breaks that definition of me other than bling, because, and that wasn't as meaningful, and I think that's the great thing about what I'm doing now, like as a creator, a producer now, and trying to get I shouldn't say trying, I am actually on my way to getting my first project off the ground, but it's like, that's going to be super meaningful to me because I get to create it, and it is exactly what Bling Empire meant to me. Having Asian leads in forefront that have never been seen before, but like now entering the scripted world, it's like there's more respect that comes from it than unscripted, which I kind of hate to be real, but I understand it, the disrespect that people have on unscripted, but it's like you get that and it's your story. It's inspired by you. It's like your story. And I still haven't gotten that same, like, wow, this was so meaningful since Bling Empire, which is, last time we filmed was like 3 years ago, So, but I know it doesn't come often, but I'm ready for the next one.
And what do you think is one thing about reality TV that people don't realize?
Yeah, reality TV is just one big improv class. It's like thrown into a situation and just navigate your way somehow. And I think that's, I've seen actors try to do reality TV and it's very uncomfortable for them. So I think it's funny actors and the scripted world disrespect reality TV so much, even though they're the most awkward at it most of the time, It's like, it is actually a talent. The reason why it looks so flawless is because they're talented.
Yeah, well, I've thought about that because if I was on reality TV, the audience would be bored to tears.
Right. That's what I mean. It's like, look at actors, their craft. It's like, why do you not know that they're acting? Actually, you can tell a lot of them are acting, but I'm just saying though, like, well, the best ones, how can you tell they're not acting? Took a lot of time, effort, and craft into it, right? Well, reality TV, well, they just say there's no skills in it. It's like, well, no, there are. You try it.
And how much creative freedom did you have in terms of how you were portrayed in the show?
Oh, you get no creative freedom in that. It's like, you are who you are. And that's why I always tell people, it's like, don't worry, if you're an asshole, you will be seen as an asshole. If you're a good person, you will be seen as a good person. If you're a mixture of both, you will be seen as both. It's like, a lot of production, they say it's manipulated, but it's like, you are cast typed for a reason, for something. They see something in you that maybe even you don't see. Oh, I'm not really a bitch. Well, you play pretty good at that, Maybe you should really look at yourself. Mm-hmm. Or some people know they have, this is where a good part of where I think a lot of good reality TV people are actually really good actors too, where it's like, they're not actually real bitches, because I've met a lot of them. And I'm like, they're like, but they know how to play that part of themselves up, right? Everybody's got a bitchy side to them. They just learn how to tune that up and master it. Well, isn't that acting?
Yeah, and it's true. I've never thought of it that way, but it is just one long improv class. Because also I feel like once you kind of be who you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like once you kind of be who you are at the beginning, you start finding yourself in certain situations where you kind of need to be a little bit more of that part of you to fit that role in a sense.
Yeah, you start to amplify yourself more. I mean, I remember my second season of Bling where the showrunner had to pull me aside and say, you don't have to play that character anymore. Like, you've been here for a while in LA. You're not the new naive guy so much. Like, you've grown, like, let's see this side of you now. That was very helpful because it's like, yeah, I was just playing it up of what I thought the character was for a little bit,
And what have been some of the most challenging and rewarding things about being on a reality series?
I think the challenging thing is the expectations, right? It's like before it aired, when everybody in the Asian community hated it for a little bit but they never seen it yet. And then they ended up loving it, right? how do you deal with that, even though your expectations was they'd actually really accept this and like it, you know? Or the expectation that you're going to get a fourth season, but then find out it's canceled, right? And, you know, I brought my girlfriend to live a life with me and have this opportunity with me, and she doesn't even get to do it. She doesn't even get to fulfill that opportunity with me. You know?
That's right. Yeah, because season 3 ended with your girlfriend Devon coming into the picture, and it very much ended open. You know, like everyone kind of expected a season 4. I felt like.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest part. You know, the anticipation of it, and then realizing, then you start to compare, which is, I know, the worst thing. It's like, you know, Netflix's measurements are just so high that, like, you know, if they don't fulfill it, but on any other network, it would have had at least 5 more seasons, you know, because the viewership was still strong. But for Netflix measurements, it's considered like cancelable, you know? So that's hard, you know, like unfulfilled dreams and expectations with a partner where you're like, oh, wow, I thought this was a guaranteed thing. And then having to navigate that with a partner, like, I think those are the hardest things. The most fulfilling, though, is to see who your real friends are at the end. Who's really there for you. I think that has been the most fulfilling thing.
And what's been the biggest thing you've learned about yourself from reality TV?
Even normal people, fame can get to your head. You know, look, I'm not the only person that it got to your head a little bit. It's like everybody says, like, it will, you know, a little bit, enjoy it, all that stuff. But it's like, there's this weird thing that happened during the pandemic with that show. It's like, it was so extreme. You know what I mean? It went from like nobody knows me to like all of a sudden I could have a face mask on and sunglasses and people notice me just by my walk. It was really weird. You know, it was like, wow. To like all of a sudden there's so many opportunities and you don't know which way to go. And it's like, no matter how much people try to prepare you, you're still not sure at the time. You know, it's overwhelming. So I think what I learned is when those opportunities come again is like really focus. Don't get distracted by people. Don't get distracted by promises, you know, because there's a lot of promises that happen. Don't get distracted by that and cut out the noise. You know, really focus on what you want to do, how you're going to do it. And don't let anything get into that zone. And then anything that does or tries to pierce it, it's like, just discard it.
Yeah, and you know, the whole thing about letting fame get to your head, I mean, how could it not? You know what I mean? It's such an extreme, it's an extreme thing, and it changes your entire life. So it's not like you can just, you're not going to notice it, you know?
Totally. And that's the thing too, it's like weird. You notice when it's gone, you know, or like faded, or you know you're not the top 10 anymore, you know, on the show. You know that. So it brings you down, was just humbling. So I definitely see the value of these ups and downs in people's careers. Because like, if it was only up from the beginning, it's like, you'll never learn humility, I think. And then it's like, as if you've never had a down, you don't know what humility is then. So I like the ups and downs. At least this is how I see it. It's because you learn what it's like to be on top. Then you learn humility. Then you know how to do it better when it comes around again. And then you can become even better. You make better decisions. You become more grounded instead of just like your head in the clouds. And it's like you're wiser. You know, you can make better decisions. And it's like, I see the value in it.
Yeah, and I have a friend. He's really famous in his field, and he experienced that the highs were really high, the lows were really low, and it was just a roller coaster until eventually he just said, you know, Alexander, like, I just little high, little low. I just kind of try to keep myself somewhere in the middle there because it's too much.
Yeah, no, I still like those high highs.
You're like, no, take me on the roller coaster.
I still like those high highs. I mean, those high highs really, those are exciting moments and they're amazing. I would never take it back. I think what every person in entertainment, influencer even, should learn is how to deal with it on the way down a little bit. Well, because everybody will come down from that cloud. Doesn't mean you go away. I'm not saying that, but it's like the peak of that moment in your life will go away. Like, how can we mentally manage that better, right? Like, because it is a depression for a little bit, right? Like, it's a post high of whatever it is, like, but nobody teaches us that, you know. It's like, I can see why a lot of actors or entertainers turn toward drugs and alcohol. Well, nobody taught them how to deal with the lows. You know, the lack of dopamine now in your head, and you're craving for that hit again. You know, like how do you deal with that, right? How do you stay out of trouble?
And you've been very vocal about your mental health journey, and now you're an advisor at TBH, which gives or students in general access to free mental health services. How has becoming an advisor changed your perspective on mental health in general?
Well, I think for me, it's like being an advisor, especially with a brand like TBH, is you start to really look at yourself and be like, okay, now I can't just talk the talk. I really got to walk the walk more. I mean, like, and by the way, like, even the greatest self-help people, psychiatrists, advisors of anything always have their character flaws, right? But like, I think for me, it really made me think like, okay, like, am I giving the best talk I can? Like where, like for instance, like on the last college campus, I was like, I don't want to do what I said before, which is just give my experience. I'm like, I want them to walk away with something now, something more useful. So like, changed even the way I deliver my talks, made me a better speaker. So I think, and made me realize like, wow, this audience is more receptive to things. So I should be careful of like what I put in their minds. Like, I don't want to just give them limitations. I want to give my experience. Yes. But I want to give them something away. I want to give them something that they can walk away with that'll make their lives better afterwards. So they don't have to navigate the same pitfalls as me or the mind traps or the limited worldviews.
And you just made a major shift from reality TV to acting, and you have roles in Troubadour and Asian Persuasion. What has that shift been like in terms of the way you're able to express yourself creatively?
Man, that's what I talk about the most actually is the shift, right? Because it's like I'm in this middle of the gap of where people see me as this reality TV guy first and then maybe acting second, right? Can he do it, right? And it's like, but each role that I've gotten an opportunity has been bigger and bigger, which I'm really grateful for. I'm really excited for Troubadour because it's my best role yet, I believe. Sci-fi, thriller, horror elements to it. I get to do a lot of great stuff that was a dream come true. You know, like I never imagined filming on Universal Studio Lot ever, and it was like, wow. Okay, I'm getting better. You know, like I'm becoming more of an actor like I always dreamed of. There was an uncomfortable shift because it was like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be an actor again, you know, when the reality TV world was going. You know, my friends were always telling me, some of them were writers, like, you told me you didn't want to act anymore. I was like, it's because I didn't know. You know, like, I thought it was dead for me, you know, because everybody always told me if you get into reality TV world, you can never be an actor. You know, I even had an old manager call me up and say, congratulations on 2 and 3, but like, you'll never be an actor. He's like, you will always be known as a reality TV person. You could have gotten away with just one season, but you did 2 and 3. I did Traders, you know, all that stuff. So it's like that transition is really tough. And when you're told that even through your management team, it's going to be tough, I just always think it's going to be tough then. So that's why I got into like development, producing, pitching my stuff. Because it's like, while I still try to go for auditions or direct bookings and stuff like that and try to do my development stuff and get that off the ground, I'm like, I need everything I can to make this dream happen again for me. You know, and so I think that's where I'm at right now, that transition of like, I won't ever say no to a great reality TV show, right? But now I'm more strategic thinking about that. It's like, does this reality TV show serve me now in my career? Does this movie now serve me in my career? Like, that is all things I ask myself now before I choose a role or do something or become a part of a project. But it's like, yeah, man, you know, it's been a really, really extremely tough transition. I will not lie about that. It's taken everything from me. You know, it's even hurt my relationships, you know, hurt my loved ones even, you know, and not intentionally, but it's like it hurts and it's hard. Hard for, you know, your loved ones to see you go through things, disappointments, pains, betrayals, backstabs, feeling this close that something magical is going to happen and then get let down, right? Or come this close and you're just one signature away from changing your life and it never happens. Or this person says they're going to fund this and never happens. This person wants you to come to this event, makes a promise and it doesn't happen. You know, everybody in Hollywood who can make your dreams come true. And then when it comes to time for them to help you make your dreams come true and work on something, nothing happens. Like all of this stuff, it's hard for even my loved ones to witness. So it's hard, but this is how I think I know it's made for me because I can't see myself doing anything else. Like this is the only way I know how to do it. I wish there was a softer, easier way, but I'll only know after it's done that I did this and it led to that. You know, but I'm for it. You know, I'm still here and I love the projects I'm on and that I'm doing and the opportunities and the people I'm working with. And those are going to be my ride or die people at the end of the day.
And Kevin, every single person that I've spoken to in entertainment says the same thing, that you can be this close and then it all falls through. So it's like nothing ever actually happens until it happens. And I think you mentioned something earlier that's really important that there should be a bigger discussion about, like, how do you navigate going down from the high? And especially not just the things that happen, but the things that almost happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a whole book of almost I could write, right? And just like any other actor, right? And just I hear stories all the time. People get cut out of a big movie or they made it to the final callback. I would actually like to know what it's like to make it to the final callback and get, you know, a result of some sort, you know? But I am fortunate enough to be able to work on sets and to see it in theaters and see what happens. So I know I'm doing better than the average actor, even in LA. But I'd say that this weird position that I thought, which is I'm not aware. I never knew this would happen, which is like when you're the in between stage. I never knew that'd be harder than the beginning stages, because the beginning stages at least like you have nothing, you know. And I think when you're in the in between, you have a lot of possibilities, like so many bigger promises, so much, because you're with these people that can actually really make shit happen, you know. And to almost be that close is harder, I think, you know, because it's like at least when I'm beginning, I'm like, oh, I'm just a beginner actor. One of these days, something can happen, you know. But then when like you're at the phase where you're like, oh, I thought that already happened. I had no idea I'd have to be 100 times more emotionally resilient now in the in-between stage. That's why I appreciate this one guy. I think people know who he is, possibly. If you don't, his name's Dan Lin. He's part of Netflix now. He does all their movies now. But he has this nonprofit called Ride Back. And a lot of their people at Ride Back help the in-betweeners and writers, right? So it's not for the beginners who have never written anything or produced anything, and it's not for the really A-list or the established people or constantly staffed or showrunners. It's for the people who have maybe had one project, you know, got into a reputable festival, because those are actually the people that need the most help. Those in-betweeners, that middle class. But there's nothing there for the middle class actor. There's nothing there for the middle class career person who's a producer. You know, it's like there's no help right there. And I compare it to even the beverage world that I came from when I did my beverage. It's like for the investors, there was nobody for me to get to the in-between. It was easy to get angel investors, but it was hard for me to get to the next step because people didn't want to invest in the next step. They wanted to invest in like the final product now, which is like you're doing $10 million in sales now. They don't want to help you in between now. It's like the same thing with acting. I was like, man, there has to be something for the in-between, because the in-between's the hardest.
This is actually, I've never heard anybody speak about this before, how beginning isn't necessarily the biggest hurdle. It can be the in-between.
Yeah, because everybody thinks the beginning, oh, I got my first break. No, I mean, it's what you do afterwards. How do you stay there? Or how do you grow more? How do you navigate the bullshit, right? And the disappointments. It's like, because when you have nothing, it's like, you got nothing. It's actually more freeing. You know, when I was skateboarding across the country, that's why I noticed. I was like, I felt free. That's the only thing I got from it. Actually, it's like I felt what freedom felt like. Nothing. You can do anything.
And you created a webtoon, Taejin, which is really cool. Can you talk about how that project came to be?
Yeah, like I was at a time. I was really struggling with, I think, certainty in my life, faith. People don't know this now, but I'm very comfortable talking about it. But like I had a hard time with trusting God or getting into faith again, and so I turned to Chinese astrology and Batsa. I had a friend who teaches it. I got really obsessed about it for a little bit. Became that typical California junkie about astrology signs and whatnot. And I imagined the world of superheroes during the pandemic about this. And I was like, man, if anybody, why can't I do this? So I started to write about it and created a story around myself as a younger kid in Philadelphia with these Chinese astrology powers in everyday life. And it's kind of like Avatar, but modern day, The Last Airbender. And had to do with elements and mystical dragons and deities and all this stuff. And I ended up just pitching it around to some of the people that I knew, and people wanted it. And then my friend was like, I know somebody at Webtoon. You should share it with him. He ended up loving it and got it sold. And we just actually finished the last episode, and that's the finale. And it was a really proud moment. But the crazy thing about that too is like, the moment I started to enter back into my faith again, it felt like God was telling me this was nice, but this is your new path now. Because the day that I got told that, this is the last episode, won't be hearing from Webtoon team anymore. That was my first day on Troubadour set. And I was so excited for this role and so invested in this that I was like, okay, this feels like the right path, And that's where I was like, it was such a great opportunity for me. It showed me what I'm capable of and what I'm doing, but it also showed me like, okay, that wasn't the path for me.
Interesting. So as it's wrapping up, you get this huge role that you're really excited for. That's kind of...
Well, I was going to be on my first day on the Universal Studio lot. I remember it was January, February, March, April 11th. April 11th, I believe it was. It was like, got the email from the Webtoon team, very sad. But I'm like, oh, here's my call sheet. Universal Studio lot. Well, goodbye. I'd rather do this anyway.
For sure. And you're working with legends like Jamie Lee Curtis, which is so cool.
Yeah. And, Ryan from Ghost Hunter Channel, he's my main castmate. It's all a dream come true. So.
And you co-founded Asian Lead Love Stories Productions. What's your vision for this company?
So the vision, I can't totally take credit for, because obviously the one thing that Devon and I, my other co-founder, my partner, my lover in life, is we both shared the same mission about seeing Asians in the media, right? She's a Vietnamese woman. She's obviously not the typical looking Vietnamese woman. Like, she really looks like the Gal Gadot of Asian women, and we both felt like we don't see enough of that, and we don't see enough powerful, really powerful women. She actually has that power in her that I love. So she and I started this because we're like, well, what else are we going to do? And this is what we wanted to do. Let's do it. Right. And the vision originally started off with just being, we wanted to see Asian leads in all the movies we do. We didn't care what genre. But we preferred romantic leads, like rom-coms. Then we started this one that we're in packaging phase of. It's a Christmas rom-com. And, she chose the holiday Christmas because, she thought about my story, which is like, I got sober during Christmas. We had a 7-year breakup, similar to this character in the story. She really led the vision for that. And it's been a wonderful journey with that. Bumpy too, right? Because, when people have two different visions, like, or ways you're going to do stuff, it's like there's a lot of head bumps, we're navigating through that very well, I think, now, but it's like we're navigating it together. And the vision has changed even a little bit now because we've gone back to faith a lot. It's like, well, what stories do we want to really tell? Well, in this Christmas rom-com, it's about, the holiday spirit, right? But it also has a little bit of faith-based element to it because it's about my recovery in AA, So it's like we found that maybe that's a great niche, plus it's a very desirable market right now. People are looking for some type of faith, maybe not the traditional faith of Christianity and churches. I'm not talking about that. It's like people are looking for hope, inspiration, something bigger than themselves, faith, whether it's God, Jesus, or going back to a spirit bigger than themselves, right? Like something to lean on to. And I felt like, well, let's start making more stories that have elements of that in it, They call it faith-based light, but it's like, why don't we sprinkle some elements in there too? So it's like, that's the vision that we see now together, and we very much came up with it a lot together through the journey. And so I can't say it's just my vision. It started off with my vision of seeing Asian leads, but then the vision started to really evolve together as we do more projects together.
And actually, I think this is a really good thing to bring up too. You and your current partner, Devon, had a 7-year breakup. And in the show, Bling Empire, you actually can see when Christine Chu brings you guys back together. I think that this is a really important thing to talk about because sometimes you think, my relationship's over and that's just that. We just weren't right for each other. But really, sometimes you're just not right for each other at that moment in time. And now you guys come back together and you're co-founders in this amazing venture. It's super inspiring. I think it's really great.
Thanks, man. I mean, yeah, I also think sometimes like you weren't ready for it because you weren't strong enough. You wouldn't have the capability to I wish I had my career 10 years ago, but I now look back on it and say, well, I wouldn't have known how to handle it.
And Kevin, what advice would you give to anybody who wants to pursue a career in entertainment?
I hear this a lot, so I'll go with the same thing. You better find faith at some point. It takes a lot of faith for it because this is the world where it is so uncertain. If you don't, you'll probably go a little crazy. And if you haven't gone crazy, then you'll probably find God again. And if you already had God, you might lose him and then you might come back. And the only thing at the end of the day is just basically going to be you and your faith at the end of the day,
And Kevin, what do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
I now understand what they say. If you don't take those shots, take every shot, because you never know which one's going to hit. So yeah, I now know what that really means. So, it's been hard for me to regret some of those, but I know look, they were just shots. Can't even tell you what the outcomes would have been or what the shots are, but it's like, yeah, don't leave shots on the table. Really take all of them and don't regret it then. Because I'd still live with a little bit of that regret, some shots I didn't take.
And Kevin, where's the best place for people to keep up with what you're doing and keep up with your career?
I mean, my favorite one is still Instagram. I mean, I know people are on TikTok. I post some things on TikTok, but it is just Kevin Kreider all across the board, YouTube as well. But yeah, a lot of social media stuff is mostly Instagram.
Well, I'm going to include the link to your Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube in the episode notes. That way, anyone who wants to check out your stuff can easily do that.
Thanks, man.
And okay, Kevin, if you could go back in time and offer your younger self one bit of advice right before you embarked on this journey, specifically tailored for you, what would it be?
I would actually not give myself any advice because I think any advice might make changes in the outcomes of things. And I actually really do come to this point where I'm really loving the outcomes. And I see the purpose of the failures, the challenges, the hardships, the successes, the wins, the people that have come in my life. So I can't change anything because I'm being real when I say this. I've learned everything from everything I've ever done. I mean, I guess even from the skateboard trip, I learned what freedom was, to be homeless for 3 months, and know what real freedom was. So I guess I did learn something. But yeah, wouldn't give myself anything. I would probably just watch myself. not in a creepy way. Just observe myself, okay?
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for doing this. This was amazing. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.